Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
If you're trying to be 100% present across all of your platforms, right? If you're on 7 places, that's 700%. So that's impossible, right? So it's doubling down on the ones that you are driving results. So figuring out where that is, doubling down on that and driving everyone else to where you want them to go. And so if that's Instagram, if that's your website, whatever that is, right? But you cannot show up 100% in all the places. And I think there is an expectation among small business owners that that's the reality. But when we do that, right, consider the fact that we're comparing ourselves to like large businesses that have 18 people on their marketing team. Like one person does the Twitter, right? Like one person does the TikTok, one person does Facebook, just the group, right? So we can't expect to hold ourselves up to that standard because that's just not reality.
You're listening to the Positively Living podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Does your head spin a bit when it comes to choosing where to spend social media time? There are so many options and they keep changing. So how do we figure out which ones to choose, make them work, and ensure they keep working? Today, I welcome Mariana Padilla to the Positively Living podcast to help us simplify our choice and leverage social media in the right way. Mariana is the founder and CEO of Red Lab Marketing. She founded Red Lab Marketing in 2020 and named her business after her dog, Walter, who's a Red Fox Labrador. Red Lab Marketing provides strategic, BS-free social media marketing services to high-powered coaches and course creators. Mariana is passionate about keeping it real about business, and she also loves supporting other female-founded and female-led organizations. In her spare time, she helps run a nonprofit organization called the Urban Farming Initiative, which aims to convert unused commercial properties into thriving urban farms and community hubs. In our conversation today, we highlight some of the most popular social media platforms and what they're used for so you can match up your message and mission to the right one. There are many platforms, so it's definitely not all-inclusive, but Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn get the majority of our focus, while Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Clubhouse, and Pinterest are touched upon. We also cover the most important factor in making your choice: clarity on what you're trying to accomplish. You need to be clear on who your people are, your audience, and where they spend their time, and on what kind of interaction you want with them. Then, when you compare that with the details of the platforms Mariana provides, you can choose the space that maximizes your time, energy, and talents. While choosing the right space is critical, which is why we're covering it today, we also cover social media trends and talk about insights and ways to track the effectiveness of what we're doing as well. One last thing I want to mention before we get into the interview is that I had a conversation on episode 60 with Deanna Seymour about taking a social media detox and stepping back from it. And the reason why she did this and why we talked about it is because it can be so overwhelming, all the demands of where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. And today's episode is going to help you with that first step of making the right choice so that you can keep from being overwhelmed. Now, let's join Mariana. Welcome, Mariana Padilla, to the Positively Living podcast. I am thrilled to have you here. We've been having so much fun on Instagram together, and I love your no-nonsense, let's cut the BS when it comes to entrepreneurship attitude, and I can't wait to get into this conversation with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here chatting with you today.
Well, let's start with you telling us a bit about who you are and who you help and what makes you light up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Mariana Padilla, founder and CEO of Red Lab Marketing. And I really love helping small businesses, particularly coaches and course creators, really help them grow their brands and businesses into the big leagues. And to do that, we take advantage of their social media platforms and leveraging social media. I really enjoy social media strategy. So figuring out what are kind of the best channels for you to be using and the best types of content to be producing. And, I'm just really passionate also about teaching entrepreneurs how to level up their own skills. So in a former life, I spent some time in education, and I think, those skills transferred over into my work that I do now.
Yeah, those teachers, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs who were teachers, and you can always tell, but it's wonderful because it's so encouraging to realize that what we're talking about today is a learned skill. We can figure this out and then we can do it. And that's awesome. Okay. Before we get into exactly what you're talking about is finding the right platforms and the right strategies and things, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about that name of your business, Red Lab Marketing.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great story. And so it's actually it was initially named after my dog, Walter, who is a Red Fox Labrador. We have a recent addition to the pack, Rosie, who joined us in December. And she is definitely the alpha. She's the little princess of the house.
You go, girl.
Absolutely. That is the meaning behind the name. And it was kind of a funny situation where I was launching my business. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be. And I was I wanted to focus on working specifically with female entrepreneurs. And so I was tossing around some ideas. None of them really fit. And then it was literally a situation where I looked down at Walter. I was like, what should we name this thing? And I was like, it's Red Lab Marketing. And that was that. That's the story.
Right on, Walter. Nice. I love it. Okay. Yeah. You need to follow Mariana on Instagram so you can see the cuteness. I'm there for it. All right. So speaking of social media, speaking of us having fun on Instagram, let's begin with why be on social media? You talked about leveraging social media. What are we trying to achieve here by being on it?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. For the first time, I think in business history, we all have access to a platform, and those platforms are, essentially free. I mean, you can pay for, ads and stuff, but we all have access to a platform. And I think what's so powerful about social media is the fact that it gives us the opportunity to really hone in and cater to our niche. I never know. It's one of the
NICHE,
Yes.
that small group that we're trying to talk to specifically. I'm so with you on that.
Absolutely. Right. Because in years previous, it was TV advertisements. It was all of these things, right, where you were speaking to the masses. And now we have the opportunity to find our tribe. And I think that is why it's so powerful and why it's so important in general that we really, really hone down exactly who we want to work with. And I think one thing that catches up a lot of small business owners when they first enter the field, and even myself was guilty of this. It was like, well, I don't want to rule out anyone because then I'm never going to make any money. So I'm just going to say I'm going to work with women entrepreneurs. The realization is when you're speaking to everyone, well, I mean, not everyone, 50% of the population, when you're speaking to almost everyone, you're speaking to no one. Right. So, I think it's just like a great vehicle to be able to connect with your audience easier if you're using the right messaging. You will get there.
Yeah. So could we say that a little louder for the people in the back? When you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one, or what it really essentially means. This sounds tongue in cheek, but what we're saying is that it's getting lost in the shuffle. And I love this idea that there was a time when the way that we could get our message out there was really to the masses. And now we have this opportunity to, I'm not even going to say the word, to direct it more specifically. We're going to have fun, grab the thesaurus and see what we can do. But it's so important that we bring it down to our people specifically. And I also suspect that our time on social media can help us find that as well. I think it has for me, that exploration of it and finding my people and realizing also too who my people are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to shift over time. And I think Right. That people get stressed out that they put together like an ideal client avatar and then they're like, well, I have to stick with that. I have to stick with that. Maybe, but your product offerings might change. Like who you want to work with might change and shift. And there's totally nothing wrong with it. And there, even when you do start, there's nothing wrong with having 2 to 3, ideal clients that you might want to work with. So I think that's a common misconception too, is like you only can have one, or B, that it's not okay that it changes.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, I've seen so much. I want to use the word evolve, right? That feels right for me in terms of what I've done as a business. I started as a professional organizer, and I realized that professional organizing is so incredibly important. But when I dug down to the why, it was the head and heart space of our lives over the actual physical space, and that they were all connected. And I was like, okay, it's productivity coaching time. I want to tap into the head and heart more. And yeah, that evolves over time. And now I realize my people, it's not just the caregivers and the nurturers and the women entrepreneurs, but it's the multi-passionate ones. And so thank you for that on behalf of all multi-passionates to say, yeah, there can be multiple groups and things. And we're just trying to make sure that we connect properly to them by way of social media.
Absolutely. And I think, continuing with that thread too, is the idea when you are communicating to the right people, it's not going to be salesy. It's not going to be cheesy. They're going to understand and they're going to get it. And it just makes sales that much easier, because I think that can be so hard when you're pitching to the wrong audience. Like it's not going to resonate. It's just so much harder for you. So it's like in your best interest to be authentic, be yourself, and speak to your people.
Oh, yeah, that's so good. And I can think of a prime example that just happened recently. Whereas, there could have been times when I was in a group where they really weren't my people. The message that I get from them is convince me why. And I'm like, whoa, I don't convince anyone. We're having a conversation. And when you need help, you'll realize if we're the right fit. Mm-hmm. Conversely, I have a new client as of yesterday who came on to a connection call and was pretty much telling me why she wanted to work with me. You know what I mean? Because she's my people.
Totally.
Okay. So when we're starting with this idea of social media, let's also, I guess, define the parameters of what we're going to talk about today in terms of the platforms we're discussing. So where are we starting? What are the platforms and our main considerations for them?
Yeah, it would depend a lot on who your audience is and kind of the demographics of your audience.
Yep. Thank you.
Of course. But my primary areas of focus are LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Heavier on the Instagram than Facebook and LinkedIn. Obviously, Twitter, TikTok, and Pinterest and YouTube have roles to play as well. But I have found with my audience, which tends to be multi-passionate women, entrepreneurs, a lot of coaches, that Instagram is a really sweet spot for me. And it has been a great way for me to like really authentically engage with people and open the door to conversation in a way that feels very authentic.
Right. So this is a really good point. Thank you for defining where we're talking today in terms of not just your expertise, but your preference, because there are so many. So given that, and going back to that that nugget that you dropped there, that's really, really important about knowing who our people are, where they spend time. Let's talk a bit about what we need to know about ourselves and our business and our audience and how we're choosing here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing to consider, I will speak from my own personal experience, is that I have a social media boot camp that teaches people how to use their social media. And so with that in mind, I wanted to attract the DIYers, right? So maybe entrepreneurs who are kind of earlier stage in their business and who are looking to do it on their own, figure it out on their own until maybe they get to a place where they want to hire someone to really take over their social media full time. And kind of knowing that, I started using Pinterest. And one reason is I think Pinterest is a place for DIYers, people who are really interested in saving those resources and learning to do it themselves. The same thing with YouTube. Now, I will say I haven't necessarily leveraged YouTube to the full extent that it could be leveraged, because I'm sure, as you know this, it's like, where do I put my efforts and focus my time?
Speak in my language, Mariana.
Right. So I think, in understanding your demographics, I do think that, there are a lot of people on Facebook. I think that a lot of people feel, an obligation to be on Facebook. But that being said, if your audience is on Facebook, are they actively using Facebook is the question. And so I tend to think that the demographic of Facebook users tends to be skew a little bit older. So like older millennials, is it Gen Xers, I believe, baby boomers tends to be the folks who are on Facebook. Now, obviously there are younger folks on Facebook too, but I would say the people who are using the platform most actively are going to be older individuals. Instagram tends to skew a little bit younger, and LinkedIn, I think, is great to just have a brand presence in general, right? Because you never know the professionals that you want to connect with in the future. So even if you maybe aren't using LinkedIn from like a customer acquisition standpoint, I do think that it's important to have an established brand presence on LinkedIn so people can just be aware of your brand and have your footprint there as well.
Right. I like that with LinkedIn brand presence. That's a really great way to phrase it. And the way that I see LinkedIn as well is if you are B2B, business to business, then that can also have some potential. I do have some questions about that. We'll get to that in a moment. Good point about Facebook. And one of my experiences, I would say, in terms of age ranges and stuff, is that I also think there's a distinction between Facebook in general, in terms of personal and professional platforms, and then the groups and people going into groups, because then they're going in there for interaction over a specific topic. So I found actually great success going into Facebook groups and interacting with people, answering questions, sharing, collaborating, and things like that. Great point about Pinterest and YouTube being a DIY time. I mean, what I haven't learned from YouTube, I cannot tell you. I've gotten through a pandemic, actually prior to the pandemic. I mean,
any sort of home project. Absolutely.
Oh my word. Yes. Just a shout out to YouTube today. Thank you very much. And amazing, amazing music collaborations. I watch on there all the time. Now, just so we can cover the other two that you happen to mention, can you tell us a little bit about Twitter and TikTok and what's going on there?
Absolutely. And so I didn't even mention all of them. There's Snapchat too. I will 100% like own the fact that I know nothing about Snapchat marketing. I haven't even dipped my toe into that. So
yep, that's fair.
TikTok, I signed up for it and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because I think Instagram is coming for TikTok. They have introduced a lot of copycat features and I think they're coming for TikTok in a lot of ways. And there's been a recent push to kind of level up their game. So, with both sides doing things to attract a bigger customer audience. But I do think that in a lot of ways, social media marketing, the future is going to really, if it isn't already there, video based and so the short form videos and using video to its fullest extent. And I think the reason for that is, a lot of things. One, video is just easier for people to view or easier for people to digest than like reading something. And you can catch people's attention a little bit easier. But I think one of the things that I always say to people is the human connection on social media is so important. And you can do that best through video, right? So people really get to understand like you and what you bring to the table and literally hear your voice, right? Because you can try to replicate that in written form, but they're not going to get the full flavor of you without, video or even audio. I think it is so important to be leveraging video for that human connection. So you're really able to connect with people on a deeper level.
Yeah, it's a really good point about the trends coming and how video is so important. And even for those of us, I'm speaking hypothetically, who are into podcasting because they're like, yay, no makeup and I can wear sweats. We're like, oh, I have to show up on video. So you're going to see me more often than not with my hair up in a ponytail. And I'm okay with that because I'm all about authenticity.
Totally.
But given that, I think there is so much that's happening with, I'm doing my best to talk to everyone about letting go of busy. But the fact is, busyness exists and overwhelm exists and attention span is minimal. So you're right. Video is definitely in there. Now, given that and the audio thing that you mentioned, I do also want to mention, and again, not an exhaustive list here, but we're trying to throw out the big ones. The place where I've tried and played a little bit also too is Clubhouse. And that's really focused on audio only. And after being so used to the video trends, it's a little different. But that whole point there about these different platforms is a wonderful segue into the next area that I want to uncover, which is we have places that we like to play, that we prefer. We have places that our audience is showing up. How do we reconcile and figure out the best places? Because from a productivity standpoint, I love to tell people, find what you love because that's where you'll show up consistently. But we also need to pay attention to where our people are. What would you say to that?
I would say ideally they're in the same place.
Yay.
Right. So I, love being on Instagram. I don't even have the Facebook app on my phone anymore because I just found it to be just like too much of an energy and time drain. So Instagram, and I love Instagram for a variety of reasons. I think I will honestly say that it got me through the pandemic with the number of dog photos. Whenever I was feeling down, I just needed to scroll through and find those dog photos. But that being said, you essentially just transition whatever messaging that you're using on your primary platform and put it into a new one, right? So whether that's Facebook, whether that's LinkedIn. I will say though that, if your focus is LinkedIn, I tend to change my content a little bit. I talk about making all of your content under certain content pillars to, move your audience through the sales funnel. But I don't actually use all of those on LinkedIn because it's more of a educational, informational business promotion platform. So I don't always bring all of my content over to LinkedIn. So it really will, again, depend on the channel. And I think the trick of social media strategy is exactly that. How do you take your ideal message on your ideal platform and translate it out to all the other places your customers and audience might be, and do it in a way that's strategic, right? So I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, at least in terms of how I've been working with this, is the idea of saying, okay, there are different places where my audience will go for different reasons. And one of the things you said, for example, Pinterest being DIY, or YouTube being for DIY. But Instagram also, I think, too, could have that potential or could lead people where you need to go. So sometimes it's a redirect, right? Or a push or whatever that, you're capturing the people there. And so for example, I love playing on Instagram anyhow. So totally hang out with me. I'm not even joking here. Positively_Lisa, come play with me. We have so much fun. Mariana can attest to this.
Yes.
We have a great time over there. So come play with us. But also too, if I'm encouraging people to come listen to the podcast, I can do so from Instagram and direct it there. And that's what my Facebook business page always was. I never considered it to be a place where I was going to put extensive content. It was more to me of a landing page to capture people when they're there and then encourage them to come to where we're having the best time.
Totally. Absolutely. And I think going back to your comment about Facebook groups, I absolutely agree with that. I think that actually is one of the main reasons I'm still active on Facebook is the Facebook groups. And depending on the group, you can really, get some great advice and community. And I think that's one thing I always talk about to my clients is how are you building community? How are you building community? Because again, it all comes back to that human to human connection. And when you are building community, when people feel like they're part of something, they are way more likely to engage with you in business than if you're just some random business who shows up on social media, right? When you are part of something. And I guess one of my favorite Facebook groups is the F-Bomb Breakfast Club. I'm not sure if I mentioned them to you, but they are amazing. So their whole motto is we build rocking businesses and swear like sailors or something like that. So that's my people. These are my people. And they have monthly meetings and that are super educational and informational. And I just adore them and have met amazing women entrepreneurs through there. It's for group for women entrepreneurs. So I think when you are able to connect to people through Facebook groups and build that tribe, it can be really powerful. And not even just being part of a group, but if that's something you wanted to incorporate into your marketing strategy, that's actually something I've been leveraging a lot with clients is how are you building community? It doesn't necessarily need to be a Facebook group. It can be a Slack group. It can be something else. But when you are able to build community, I think it's just so valuable.
It is so true. And when you're building community, it doesn't mean that you have to have a group that you're building, but you are connecting with community in some way. And then again, you invite them. I consider Positively Living and the podcast to be a community. And actually, it inspired me to create a Facebook group, the Positively Living community. But moreover, it's about our connection to each other. It doesn't matter necessarily where we meet or where we connect. But yeah, Facebook groups are still very valuable for that. And the good news is from a productivity standpoint, and I need to give you a shout out for saying that you got the app off because it was too energy draining for you. Good for you. Given that, you can control, especially with Facebook groups, you can have those favorited. So they're the specific ones right at the top. And you can go into Facebook intentionally when you're ready, check your groups, have notifications set for them, shut notifications off for everything else. Go in, check, connect with your people, invite them out, like, hey, let's DM or come play with me on Instagram or email me or whatever. And then you're able to get the benefit of that without necessarily that time suck, that vortex.
Yeah, you can't and you don't have all your energies focused if you're trying to be 100% present across all of your platforms, right? If you're on 7 places, that's 700%. So that's impossible, right? So it's doubling down on the ones that you are driving results. So figuring out where that is, again, for me, that's Instagram. It's going to be different for each brand, but doubling down on that and driving everyone else to where you want them to go. And so if that's Instagram, if that's your website, whatever that is, right? But you cannot show up 100% in all the places. And I think there's an expectation among small business owners that that's the reality. But when we do that, right, consider the fact that we're comparing ourselves to large businesses that have 18 people on their marketing team. One person does the Twitter. Right? One person does the TikTok, one person does Facebook, just the group, right? So we can't expect to hold ourselves up to that standard because that's just not reality.
Right. So that's why picking one or two, keeping it nice and simple. And it's not that you can't grow into it. I'm on multiple platforms, but I'm on those platforms in different ways and with a different amount of energy. And when I talked about pushing content, I create content for Instagram, push it automatically to Facebook and share in different ways. Actually, Pinterest and LinkedIn are not that big for me. LinkedIn, I do agree. There's brand presence. I share the podcast there. And interestingly, I do pins for the podcast. So if you're on Pinterest, you can access each episode of the Positively Living podcast. However, I don't do much more than that because I don't have the bandwidth for it. And that goes back to that question I originally asked you about where we're best suited to be and also how that might match up to what we enjoy.
Exactly.
And when I figured out that my people are on Facebook and Instagram, I'm like, okay, then I'm all in for Instagram because I enjoy it. And that's where I'll be consistent and authentic. Like you said, sharing, not salesing, right?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So with all these things that are coming out and changes and things like that, how do we not only choose and keep it working, but not get distracted by the bright, shiny objects and the fads? What do we do to create that filter, right? So that we're not like, oh, I'm going to be on this now and go too far.
Totally. Yeah. I call that shiny object syndrome. And so, and it's real, right? Because there's a never ending source of places you could be marketing your business. I think if you're not sure, if you're just dipping your toe into social media marketing, I think a good place to start is pushing out content to different channels and kind of experimenting and see how it does. And so I think one of the things people find, and I will just speak from my own experience in working with clients, is that it is very difficult to grow an organic Facebook following. It is extremely difficult because they want you to pay for ads, and they won't ever say that they're throttling accounts because you don't buy ads, but they're throttling accounts because you don't buy ads. The algorithm is holding back your content because you're not buying ads. So word of warning, it's really hard. And so I think that's why people, again, going back to the Facebook groups, that's a way you can, see success. It really depends on what your goals are, right? Is it having a following? Do you have something to sell? In that case, I think Instagram is a great place to showcase your products. You can set up a shop now. Pinterest is very visual. And the thing I think that makes Pinterest so unique is that it's really a pass-through site. The goal of Pinterest is you see this pin and you pass through to someone else's site. Whereas Instagram, it's harder to get people off. You have to get the link in bio, right? It's hard to get them out of Instagram. Right. So I think it depends on what your goals are. If it, is building a larger B2B community, then maybe it's doubling down on LinkedIn and, getting people to sign up for your newsletter and building connections that way. So I think it really depends on what ultimately your business goals are, the service that you're offering. But something that I always say to clients is always be testing. And so I think as marketing is a kind of scientific, there's no one right answer for marketing. And you might try something and it'll just like totally exceed all of your expectations, or conversely, it might just totally suck. Right. And you like, that's just like it's going to happen.
Well, that didn't work.
Right. So I think it's being consistent, it's showing up consistently, tracking those results, and then looking at those results and saying, okay, like here's where we're seeing traction. This is not doing anything. Maybe we, post monthly or something just to have some sort of presence, but we don't focus our efforts there. Right. So I think that is a piece of the puzzle. And I feel like that's when I tell people that, they're like, oh my God, that means I need to change the strategy. And they get so bent out of shape.
No, you said consistent. Yes, I meant consistent as long as it's working. I maybe I didn't mention that before.
Exactly. But I mean, all you're basically doing is just like tracking your results. That should be part of your process anyway. And if you aren't tracking your marketing results, then like you're missing a huge key part of it. So
right, which is a perfect segue into insights. So can you leave us with a few tips or tricks, or the simplest way that we can start seeing what's actually going on, things that we should be looking for, I suppose, to know what's working and what isn't?
I think the one people get caught up on is follower count. And I don't put much stock into that. It's great to have a larger audience, but at the same time, if you have a smaller audience, you're able to build community easier. You can connect with people. I love to go in and like literally I will send people a welcome message just for joining. It is not made it. It is coming from me. Like, thanks for joining the journey. And so people get really caught up in follower account. But if you have 50 new followers and 45 of them are Forex traders, like or Bitcoin people, or all of the other scammers that end up in your Instagram, like it doesn't matter. Right? Like that does not matter at all. That's not going to help you grow your business. So I think, first of all, if you have a business, make sure your Instagram is set up as a business account. That's step one, and not a personal account. Because then once you get to 100 page followers for your business, you can have access to their native Instagram insights, which is just within the app. You can go in, you can search posts by engagement rate. You can search your posts by like website taps, like which are the posts that are like getting people to get, as I said, off of Instagram and out onto your website. And so the things that I always track is, yes, I will track follower count just to see growth rate, but I don't put as much stock into that as engagement rate and things that show people taking action, whether that's bookmarking, sharing, commenting on your post, those kind of things. And then again, figuring out like, what are the things that are getting people to click through to your website? And then that can be good insight too, if you did ever want to invest in Instagram ads, right? Then, okay, this is my top performing post, organic, that got people, off clicking through to my website. This is the one that I'm going to promote because I know that this performed organically. So that is a good way. And Facebook also has a insights built into their page. The amount of information you can get from their insights has gone down over the last couple of years because of like data law reporting, but you can see just how your post performs. You're going to be able to see less about like the people, less about your followers. Of all the platforms, I think YouTube has the best built-in analytics. They're really great. They're super in-depth, pages and pages of stuff built in for free that you can see. And then, there are all sorts of paid tools that you can invest in. Syfe, CYFE being the one that I invest in. It's about $10 a month. And it gives you like really, really detailed data that you can't get natively.
Excellent. And so when you're talking about taking action, which we will call engagement, right, is also called engagement. So given that, it sounds like one of the simplest steps we can take is to reflect on what kind of engagement we're looking for. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of it is simply knowing that people are seeing the posts, if they're liking or they're bookmarking and so forth. So that's part of it. And then the other kind of engagement or taking action, if you will, is what we're looking for depending upon the kind of business we have, or depending upon whatever it is that our purpose is, whether we're trying to get a message out there, or we're trying to sell a product, or whatever it happens to be that we want to connect to that. Those are the insights we're trying to get, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think that sounds like a great place to wrap up, because those first steps are getting really clear on who our people are, where we're wanting to build this community, build this relationship, where we have the most fun. Maybe we could draw a Venn diagram. I always want to bring a Venn diagram into the mix. And find that sweet spot, and then track what's happening, track the action, use the insights that are there to start, mm-hmm. and just do it a little at a time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else you want to leave us with?
I guess the only other thing that I always remind people is that if you wouldn't want to have a one-way sales conversation with someone in real life where they're just like feeding information at you, don't do it on social media. You need to like cultivate relationships with people and treat people like humans.
Amen to that.
That's it. That's the last one.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give a shout out to Mia Francis Poulin, who was just on the podcast with me talking about, the ethical copy that converts and talking about how we have these relationships with people, how we can do so ethically and with respect to our clients. And so many times the clients that I end up with are people that have become friends and, acquaintances and people that I'm friendly with and that we live, similar lives, appreciate similar things. And I think that's so beautiful because there's a wonderful sort of collaboration in and of itself that you can have with your clients when you do it that way. And they end up being the best ones to have.
100%.
Awesome. Okay. With that in mind, where can we find you? We want to connect with you. I keep mentioning Instagram. Where else?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's redlabmarketing.com is my website. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on YouTube, and you can actually see all of my past episodes of my IG Live series, Entrepreneurship BS Busting, which you will be joining me for next week.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Yay!
So you can find those on YouTube. I also show up on LinkedIn pretty regularly as well.
Excellent. I'll make sure to have those links in the show notes so it'll be easy to find. But honestly, if you just come hang out with me on social media, you're bound to find Mariana too. And so with that, let's have some fun with the rapid wrap up. Are you ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Please fill in the blank. The song that always makes me dance is?
Oh boy. Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones.
It's a good one. Okay. The quote or mantra I share all the time is?
Well, I actually have it tattooed on my arm. You can kind of see it upside down, but it says, let go or be dragged. And I feel like if it's not right, if you're hanging on to it, it's just going to keep dragging you down. Got to let it go.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right. How about a resource, book, or app that makes my life easier is?
I love Canva. Does that count?
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yes. Are you kidding me? That's the best. I mean, family collages, business graphics, you name it. Yeah. No, Canva's awesome. That's a great recommendation. Okay. And last but definitely not least, what or whom are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for my fiance, Kevin, who is a serial entrepreneur. So he gets it and he knows. And my daughter, Gabby, who is just turned 12 a couple days ago and who is always cheering me on. So my support group, that's what I'm grateful for.
Love it. Okay. Well, I am grateful for you, most certainly. And I am so appreciative that you took the time to come here today to talk with me and that you're shining your light in this world and willing to share it with us.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This was just so amazing. And it was such a pleasure to be able to chat with you today.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.